This special Franco Mastantuono episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by Emoji Mates. Head on over to emoji-mates.com. That's MOJI-MATES.com for the best swag, football swag you can get. Every single Real Madrid player, including legends like Di Stefano, Zidane, Cristiano Ronaldo, Toni Kroos, Luka Modric. New arrivals, chill guy Dean Howson is here, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and everyone else. Go to emoji-mates.com. You got hoodies, shirts, stuff for your kids, your parents, yourself, your wife, your husband, brother, sister. Go to emoji-mates.com and get your swag ASAP. We're also brought to you by Doubletree Suites by Hilton Hotel, Charlotte, South Park. The only place we even considered staying in Charlotte when we went to see Real Madrid versus Pachuca on June 22nd. And this is the hotel that you should be staying at when you book your trip to Charlotte. Overlooking Symphony Park, the hotel is within a 2-minute walk to South Park Mall, Charlotte's premier shopping and dining destination. They have an outdoor pool with a waterfall, a fitness center, and a restaurant and a lounge. And every stay starts with a warm chocolate chip cookie. With that being said, we are going to dive into a Franco Mastantuono scouting report. Let's get to it.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
What's up, Madridistas? Great to see you guys. Great to be with you guys once again. I feel like it's been a long time since we did an actual podcast. I think after the Club World Cup, it got pretty slow, to be quite honest with you. This is a very slow time of year because we're in between. There's no preseason, so we're in between this, weird lull. Club World Cup is over. Players are on vacation. The only thing to talk about is fans arguing about shirt numbers, which I got to tell you, I don't care. But hey, man, if it keeps you guys entertained, argue till the death about who should have got the number 10. I don't care. But you know what I do care about? Franco Mastantuono. So we're here to talk about it. This scouting report is going to fall in line with the previous episodes we did about Alvaro Carreras, Dean Howson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and how they fit at Real Madrid. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What's their best position, player comps? And this is a two-parter, just like the other episodes. So in part 2, we got Santiago Bauza, who is a journalist who works for the Argentinian Football League, knows a lot about Mastantuono, and also is part of a podcast with an epic name called Hand of Pod, which is a name I'm super jealous of. So Santiago is going to come on in part 2 and give us the full Franco Mastantuono scouting report. And part 1 of this podcast is me just giving my thoughts as well, because you know me, I like to do my homework. I like to watch film. I like to read scouting reports. I like to look at the data. Like to go on a deep dive and get my best understanding of this new player that Real Madrid have signed. And I have to say right off the bat, I'm excited about this one. And Mastantuono falls in line with the transfer model that is led by Juni Calafat, which is to scout younger players before they get to this world record fee level of, an established mid-20s superstar. The model has obviously changed in the last few years because now we're competing with the oil money and we're competing with the PSGs, with the Newcastles, etc. And obviously, I'm just scratching the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of clubs now with a lot of money, and no longer is Real Madrid able to outcompete everyone. But we do have prestige more than any other club in football history, and we have a lot of pull. And this new model has worked. You think about the success of Vinicius Jr., of Fede Valverde, of players like Casemiro, players like Rodrigo, of players, even though they didn't work out at Real Madrid, but were financially a huge success, like Martin Odegaard, and the list goes on. And of course, there's going to be misses. There's going to be Reniers, for example, and that happens. Not everything will be met with a resounding success. There's no such thing as a 100% accuracy rate with these things, but I think the model makes sense. Mastantuono is the latest. And he doesn't come necessarily cheap but he does come with from an Argentinian standpoint, a world record transfer fee from a player coming out of Argentina. He is the best player in Argentina, not my words, but Santiago's coming up. We saw Leo Ravel's husband wax lyrical about him, devastated that he's leaving River Plate because he is a River fan. Mastantuono was an incredibly promising player, and to put it into perspective, and not to overhype him too much, but this podcast will overhype him quite a bit, but we'll do our best not to, because there are things you can pump the brakes on certain things, and we'll get to that in a second. But to give you some perspective, there are 5 players in Argentina's history who made debuts at the Argentinian national team level under the age of 18. One of them was Diego Maradona, and another one was Franco Mastantuono, and there were 3 others as well. So he is a very, very promising player, and I think what stands out to me right off the bat about him is that he is a leader at a very, very young age. And this is a weird comparison to make because this is not a football comparison, but it's a basketball comparison. For those of you guys who followed Real Madrid baloncesto or even follow the NBA now, I'm referring to Luka Doncic. When Luka Doncic arrived at Real Madrid as a kid, he was the leader. He was the guy everybody would look to on the team. There are players who are 10 years older than him who would refer to him as the leader, the guy who was mature beyond his years, the guy who took over games, the guy who organized the build-up, the guy who created. And the maturity with him is something that stands out, and it's very similar to the maturity that, like, let's say Jude Bellingham had when he came in at a pretty young age. But of course, Mastantuono was even younger, and he technically cannot even arrive at Real Madrid yet because he has not turned 18 yet. So once he turns 18, he's going to come in basically just before the season starts. So there's not much time to integrate him, which is why I think we got to be patient with the way Xabi Alonso does integrate him. But I think we will see him pretty quickly, and this is my prediction. This is not based on any reporting or any sources. This is just my hunch, okay? So feel free to take it with a grain of salt, but this is what I foresee. I think with Jude Bellingham's shoulder surgery and the amount of time he's going to miss the first 2-3 months of the season, I think we can actually look at Franco Mastantuono to fill that role. And the reason I say that is because of this, because he is not a traditional right winger, but he can play as a central player, as a player who can cut it. He can play centrally, and he is a terrific creator. He's terrific at moving between the lines, which is exactly what Xabi Alonso wants of a player like Jude Bellingham. He said it, so much in the past, that not so much, but he's talked about it in the past about he wants Bellingham stationed between the lines, roaming in between those channels. While the wing backs get the width high up the pitch, you have the attackers making their runs in behind, and you want Jude to move in between the lines around to give Arda Güler and Tchouaméni and Dean Howson targets to hit vertically. And Mastantuono was very good at that. And once he gets in those positions, he's very creative. He's very cerebral. He has high football IQ. He's a creative player. He's got a beautiful touch, beautiful technique, ball control. And the other thing is that, I think part of the reason why I think Xabi Alonso will like him, and by all accounts, he already does like him, even though he has not set foot at Real Madrid yet. Part of the reason he will really like him is because Mastantuono has that pausa, that we've been missing when Cruz left. And look, I have to be very careful saying this because I don't think Mastantuono is a midfielder, and certainly he's not a Toni Kroos at all. But I think when you factor in players like him and Arda Güler and Trent Alexander-Arnold and Dean Howson, you can start to piece together much better ball progression than you had last season. So I'm excited for that aspect of it. And I think Mastantuono can help you control games, which is what Xabi wants. He's an advanced playmaker, and he's not despite him being a good dribbler, he's not the kind of player who's going to take players on. And this is why we can't bin him in the category of a traditional right winger. He is going to get minutes in that position, but he's not going to be like Arjen Robben or Lamine Yamal. He's going to be more like Osil or David Silva, or even Arda Güler. But I think Arda Güler is going to play much deeper than him this season and beyond. But Mastantuono fits more on that kind of playmaking right winger with the left foot who can cut in and pump balls into the box, find his teammates. He's a shooter. He can shoot from distance. He's a really good direct free kick taker, and he has terrific vision. And again, just because he doesn't take players on like a Lamine Yamal or an Arjen Robben doesn't mean he can't dribble. He can, but he's just not going to be a prolific dribbler. But he's very good in tight spaces to escape pressure. He's very trickery, very eel-like with his dribbling. He can kind of escape pressure in different situations because he is such a good dribbler and he has such a silky touch. So keep an eye on that. I think he can take those Jude minutes to start the season. And again, I'm not going to say it's going to happen right away, but I do think it's going to happen relatively quickly because you have to factor in Rodrigo if he leaves, and nothing has changed in the Rodrigo situation as far as I know. He still does have one foot out the door, but as Lucas Navarrete reported on Managing Madrid today or yesterday, his sources told him that there are still no concrete offers for Rodrigo for Real Madrid to bite on yet. And that may change, and he'll have to sit down with Xabi Alonso to talk about that. But I think Mastantuono is going to be a pretty special player, and we got to be careful with overhyping him too much. I think the hype naturally comes with players like him because, we have pretty good experiences with players from River Plate in our past, like Alfredo Di Stefano, like Gonzalo Higuain, and as Santiago pointed out to me in part two, players like Cambiaso, players like Santiago Solari, who obviously was a very serviceable player as well. And, again, this is a player that River Plate fans were very sad to see go. There was inevitability to it for sure, but it was probably sooner than they had anticipated. And part of that is because Mastantuono himself really wanted to join Real Madrid as quickly as possible. So he's very ambitious, but also really, really wanted to join Real Madrid, which for us is a green flag. River Plate fans will have their own opinions, as Santiago will explain to us in part two. But we are also very excited for his desire to play for Real Madrid and how much upside he has. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much else for me to go over that Santiago won't go over with me in part two. But keep an eye out on Mastantuono gradually easing into the team to start the season. Again, he joins right when his 18th birthday hits, which means there's not much time to incorporate him into preseason and whatnot. But I think you will see him get integrated relatively quickly, like within the first month or so. And I think he's got a lot of potential, Before we bring in our guest, Santiago, did want to mention something to you guys. We wanted to give a quick word from our sponsor, NordVPN, who genuinely saved my life during the Club World Cup. So I was in the US for a full month covering Real Madrid, as you guys know. And without NordVPN, I wouldn't have been able to access half the sites and services I rely on back home. From streaming matches to using everyday apps, it kept everything running smoothly, just like I was browsing from Spain or Canada or wherever I am. It's super easy to use. One click, you're connected. They've got over 7,900 servers in 126 countries, and it's one of the fastest VPNs out there, so you're not sacrificing speed for security. You can use one account across 10 devices, and it works on everything: laptops, phones, tablets, and even smart TVs. To get the best discount on your plan, go to nordvpn.com/Madrid. That link also gets you 4 extra months free on the 2-year plan. And if you change your mind, no problem. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. You'll find the link in the episode description. With that being said, let's welcome in Santiago. All right, welcome to part two of this special Franco Mastantuono scouting report episode of the Managing Madrid podcast. I am thrilled and honored to be joined today by Santiago Bauza, a journalist working for the Hand of Pod podcast, which is the greatest name in podcasting history. Santiago, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Well, first of all, thank you very, very much for the invitation, for having me. It's always great. Yeah, I mean, I've been a little bit under the weather on during this week, but I feel like I hope that it can sound good enough to record this podcast now.
You sound fantastic for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So I obviously wanted to pick your brain about Franco Mastantuono, and this is a
Mhm.
kid who, by all accounts, speaking to people in Argentina, is very special. And people outside of Argentina don't necessarily know that much about him, apart from scouting reports and some of these YouTube clips that we've seen, and some of these
Mhm.
Club World Cup games that we've seen. And so for us, he is relatively new on the radar. Whereas I think in
Mhm.
Argentina, you guys had known about him for a while because he was 16 when he started for River Plate. He made his debut with Argentina at a very young age as well. I don't know exactly how old he was, but around the same timeline, he was one of the youngest players to make his debut for the Argentinian national team. So I'm curious to know when he kind of got on the radar for you. When did you realize that this kid was special?
I think that for most of us, the first time we began to hear about Franco Mastantuono is, I think, around the 2023 Under 17 World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. It was a team that was managed by Diego Placente, who has been like a very, very central component in the Argentine youth setup, having already been a player for Argentina, even the youth national team as well. He made some first team appearances. I think he was at the 2002 World Cup, of course. And this Argentina team in 2023, the under 17s, was this team that was comprised mostly of this incredible batch of River Academy products, among which there was also Claudio Echeverri, who is now with Manchester City, who's already scored for them as well. And there's also a couple of players who are also in and around River's first team right now, such as, for example, Kiyan Sobhani, another forward who was very much touted for great things as well. But I feel like Echeverri as well as Mastantuono were probably the breakout stars of that team. Of course, Matantuono back then was extremely young. He was probably one of the youngest players in that squad. He was born, of course, in 2006, I think. So that would make him like right about, yeah, what, 16, 15, something like that. No, yeah, sorry, 16, 17. I mean, so yeah, he was like right on the edges of that of the requirements, I would say, of that squad. No, I think he's from 2007. Or I don't know if 2006 or 2008. Sorry, eight. Sorry, yeah, 2008. Sorry, I'm getting the dates mixed up a little bit. But anyway, yeah, he was certainly one of the breakout stars of that squad, being so young in a squad that was already like under 17. But he was like perhaps an age group younger maybe than the rest of them, and he was absolutely starring for them. Which at the same time, when you're a River fan, for example, and you see a player so young making these strides, you want him to go up to the first team as soon as he can, because you don't know how long you're gonna be able to enjoy him, because not long after you're gonna have several European clubs smelling around. So he only got to play 2 games in the reserves for River before going up to the first team. And so he made his debut a year after that after that World Cup, where, by the way, Argentina reached the semifinals, which was a great performance for Argentina, given that they don't usually do very well in the under 17 youth group. So in the under 17 age group, so he made his debut in I would say mid to late 2024, and not long after, a little bit because River begin to be a little bit more, let's say, mediocre when it comes to the performances, and because they have such an aging squad. Marcelo Gallardo returns to River in mid 2024, and he begins to crowd a little bit the River squad with a lot of like returning players from his glory days, many of which aren't exactly performing at their best. And Mastantuono, at 16, 17 years old, becomes this shining light, not just because of the fact that he's showing a lot of promise, he's beginning to like play with a lot of personality, but also a lot of leadership, and almost like carrying this River team, despite the fact that he has some teammates and even some opponents who are double his age, which is something that you don't really see very often. It is of course very common for young players to star in Argentine football, but this young, for a 17-year-old to be unquestionably the best player in Argentina, you probably didn't see that since the days of, I don't know, Javier Saviola in the turn of the century. Someone who perhaps his career wasn't quite as exciting as his early days had promised, but he was absolutely like the full package, the complete product, even before turning 18 years old, something like Michael Owen, let's say. So I feel like that's around the time when people began to realize how good he was. Just the lack of fear, the personality, and also just how much he contributed. Not just some exciting flashes, but also goals and assists and this incredible passages of play.
So the way you're speaking about him is giving me goosebumps. Like I'm like, and everyone listening to this who is a Madridista is getting excited. And I do wonder, like, what tends to happen, like when you do scouting reports and you sign a new player, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of hype, and of course, eventually, when you see the player up close, sometimes that hype dies down, or you kind of see maybe some of the struggles. Not to say that that will happen with Masantuono, but if there was a way you could give us, is there another perspective? Is what I'm asking. Where like is there a situation where he's being too hyped? Are there weaknesses to his game? Is there potential for it to go wrong? Just to give like some devil's advocate and provide a different perspective. Or maybe it is the hype is completely justified in your eyes. I'm actually very curious to know if there's another side of the story.
I mean, I feel like you have a point in the sense that, of course, I have just told you that it's absolutely not a normal thing for a player of Mastantuono's age to be unquestionably the best player in the Argentine league at his age. Having said that, there's also these questions that always arise when you have a player moving to one of the biggest teams or the biggest leagues in the world, from a league that that could be considered lesser, like the Argentine league, in the sense that is he going to adapt? Is he going to translate this dominance into a team with a lot more? I mean, I wouldn't say that Real Madrid are like have this massive expectations more so than River, simply because River are expected to dominate, of course, in the Argentine league, and they have not been very successful at that, simply because, I mean, they're a lot of promise with their squad and with their setup and a lot of different things. I mean, there's questions, of course, whether he can make that transition. That, I mean, from a physical standpoint and also from this sort of personality standpoint and his ability and how much he can, how he can perform against. You would assume better defenses, better quality of players. But also, I feel like there have been some questions that arose during his Club World Cup performances, in which River, of course, were given a test against, no, I wouldn't say better or worse opponents, but I would say different opponents. All three of River's opponents in the group stage came from different continents. And it was Urawa, Monterrey, and Inter. And to be quite honest, he didn't create a great impression in either of those three games. His performances in the Club World Cup have been quite disappointing. You would have to ask how much of that was influenced by the fact that there were already rumblings that he had everything agreed with Real Madrid by then. If that was something that had been affected. He had been affected by that, and I feel like also there's a reason why his exit from River has soured the opinion of many River fans. Not simply because of the way that of the fact that he has left so early, but also the way in which he did. Because Mastantuono originally had promised to stay until the end of the year, since River are still in the midst of a Copa Libertadores campaign. But also not just because of this promise that hasn't been kept, but also there's this I don't know, you probably know, since you are a part of the Real Madrid sort of ecosystem, that there's this YouTuber, this very famous YouTuber called DJ Mario. I don't know if you know about him. Yeah, you probably do.
I mean,
So
I don't. It's mostly Spanish content, right?
yeah, yeah,
I don't.
it does this.
I haven't seen much of his content, but I know that he's a big
Right.
deal. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this guy, Big Mario, DJ Mario, sorry, he posted a YouTube video, probably a few days after like the first reports came that Mastantuono had signed for Real Madrid, saying that he actually messaged Mastantuono way before things were even close to for him to sign to Real Madrid, back when in the River were still challenging the title, the Argentine title, before a crunch game against Platense, asking him whether he would be ready to join Real Madrid. And Mastantuono said that he was waiting for the call. Let me remind you, this is right before a crunch league game, which River eventually lost to Platense, a team which, by the way, River were never expected to lose in the first place, and who ended up winning the title. But still, once that info came out from the host's mouth as well, from DJ Mario himself, a lot of River fans turned on Mastantuono and said that probably he was like very much ungrateful. He was impatient to leave the club. Like he was just using River as a platform to leap into something different, which is not exactly wrong, but at the same time, as I said before, the way in which he did it, just the fact that he had his head turned like way before the fact. Things, I mean, there have been questionings around the fact that even if he probably looks older than 17, there probably may be some aspects when it comes to his maturity that I would say that needs to still be worked on or developed. Maybe that's a little bit something that you need to be on the lookout in case something happens, simply because he's still 17 years old. Like he's not even turned 18 yet. He's not even allowed to join Real Madrid until he turns 18. That's going to happen now in August. So I feel like you have to take those things into account. You probably, as much as the hype might be justified, you need to be a little bit patient with the fact that he's still way too young for him to carry those expectations.
I mean, the things you're saying are, it's to a Real Madrid fan hearing this, it's music to our ears, because it's like, oh, this guy
Yeah.
really wanted to play for Real Madrid from the beginning. He was eager, and obviously there's
Mm.
just different perspectives to have. But, we have not a huge history with River Plate, but, enough. I think he's the fourth player now. Obviously, Alfredo Di Stefano was originally from River, and then eventually we got Javier Saviola, who you mentioned earlier, who was highly promising, and then he went to Barca, and then indirectly came to Real Madrid, was not as great as he was at River. I don't think he lived up to it. Gonzalo Higuain is another one who had a pretty successful Real Madrid career. And now we have
Santiago
Mastantuono.
Solari as well.
Santiago Solari. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
He was
a River youth product. Cambiaso as well.
Oh, there you go. I mean, it just goes deeper and deeper. So we have,
Yeah.
I mean, and both Solari and Cambiaso, Solari was a very serviceable squad player. Cambiaso obviously was great mostly at Inter, but he was very promising when he was at Real Madrid too. So we're excited. I'd like to speak to you about where he fits into the team. Obviously, everything you're mentioning, he seems, like a leader at a young age. He seems like he's ahead of his age group, and he comes into now Real Madrid, which has players like Vinicius and Mbappe. So maybe in that sense, he has less pressure on his shoulders, because I don't think he'll be playing right away. He'll be arriving because of you mentioned the 18th birthday. That basically brings him to Real Madrid just before the season starts. So there's not much time. to integrate him. So I'm sure Xabi Alonso won't throw him in right away. But I wanted to ask you this because one of the interesting things about Real Madrid at the beginning of next season is that Jude Bellingham is going to be out for like 2, 3 months because of a shoulder surgery. And a lot of people are
Mm,
asking who can take his place. And I wanted to throw this question at you because it doesn't seem like he's a traditional right winger. He can play
mm.
just behind the striker, he can cut inside. Um, is that a role that he could potentially fill? If and if not, where do you see his best position?
Well, when the first reports came out that Real Madrid had signed Mastantuono, there was a lot of questions over whether he would go straight into the first team or whether he would be loaned out. And apparently, the rumblings that came from that is that he would be integrated straight into the first team right away. And given the current state of Real Madrid's squad, the fact that Rodrigo is looking to leave the club simply because he probably sees himself as a left winger, and there's already like two or maybe even three players in that role. He's been played on the right, but he's not been quite as good as he was on the left. Another Guler, who's also a player who's probably more of an attacking midfielder than a right winger. Um, I feel like there might be a spot that Mastantuono could capitalize on the right wing if he does things well. I feel like I don't know if Real Madrid signed him specifically to be like the starting right winger on the team, but I feel like there's an open opportunity for him to take that role if he plays his cards well. So I feel like if there's one, and as you said before, like the characteristics that of Matantuono, the fact that he likes to cut inside, he likes to dribble, he likes to take on defenders. I feel like that's going to be really beneficial for him. Also, the fact that perhaps in Spain, defense is. I mean, you will have probably more skillful defenders, more technical defenders, but probably defenders that sit a little bit deeper, who aren't as intense or as physical maybe as in Argentina. So I feel like that might also benefit Mastantuan a little bit, as I said before, as long as he can handle the pressure, as long as he can handle the jump and the expectations, of course, that a player like him in a club like Real Madrid would entail some to avoid something happening like what happened to Hendrik, maybe, who probably was put too many expectations on his shoulders and probably could have could have done with more of an easier transition into Real Madrid. Maybe that's also something to take into account. Just the fact that as much as there might be a spot for him to take in that first team on the right wing, that would be ideal for him. But maybe if he takes a little while to get going, maybe Xabi Alonso should know better than to like keep playing him and playing him until something happens, because that's gonna increase the pressure. At the same time, we know that Real Madrid is a club that doesn't wait around for players. You have to like perform immediately. So it's interesting to see what are the I would say the solutions that Xabi Alonso is going to come up with, simply because there's still a big question mark around what's the system that he's going to use, how is he going to use his players. I feel like the Club World Cup is leaving more questions than answers when it comes to that, especially when it comes to like the things that he tried against PSG and backfire spectacularly, I would say. So I feel like perhaps Bellingham's injury and his time on the sidelines may mean that he can have a little bit more of a balanced team, in the sense that you're not going to be forced to like play so many attacking players who don't really track back as much as you want, as much as you need to. Like that's I feel like that's what happened in that game. So maybe with Matantuono coming in, if he is willing to do that defensive work, or if Xabi Alonso is willing to like play him in a more balanced team, I feel like he can perform really well if he can make that jump.
Well, I was going to ask you about that side of his game too, and
Mm,
there were so many reports when we signed him that Xabi Alonso wants him to start right away, and my head
mhm,
was like, how can you possibly know this? Like, I like Xabi Alonso probably has a certain idea and only he knows, and even he
Mm.
might change his mind once he sees everything up close. So, but either way, I do believe that Mastantuono will have a role to play and an important role, if you ask me. And I think based on what we've heard and seen, he's going to be a very, very, very good player.
Mm.
Um, but you mentioned if he's willing to put the defensive effort in, and I'm wondering, has he been shown? And this is a question out of ignorance because I don't know, because most of the stuff you see are obviously like his
Mm.
attacking abilities and his ability on the ball. How does he do with things like defensive work rate and pressing?
I think it's an interesting question to answer because I feel like is at River it does feel like he wasn't pressured maybe. I mean he wasn't like forced to do defensive work simply because everyone understood that he's way too young. He's way too like you shouldn't burden him with the work of an established player when at an age like that at 17 you want a young player to express himself, to feel free on the pitch, to be comfortable. And River perhaps do have enough, let's say, experienced and yeah, players who have fought so many battles for them to like do the defensive work for him. And also because it does give the feeling that if you move Matantuono away from the box, you're not going to get the best of him either. So my question around defensive work is because simply because I've seen Real Madrid become a little bit unbalanced, perhaps when they try to field so many attacking players in the same formation, in the same starting lineup, which is something a problem that's been recurring over and over and over for Ancelotti last season as well. Because there might be pressure, for certain players to play all the minutes, even if they might not exactly blend together. And I feel like Matantuono has an opportunity to blend together simply because Real Madrid might be needing right now a right winger, a starting right winger. I feel like that role hasn't exactly been taken yet, especially when we consider the imminent future of Rodrigo, if we are to believe that he might leave the club. Uh, but at the same time, you do see that Xabi Alonso's teams tend to do a lot of defensive work, a lot of running. Perhaps with had he been part of the preseason with Xabi Alonso, we might have seen that part of him develop a little more. But since you said before, since he can only join in mid-August when he turns 18, he's not gonna have the privilege of a full preseason with Real Madrid. So there's the question of whether he's gonna do enough. He's gonna be like ready maybe to adapt to a system like that. If Xabi Alonso is going to use the same system as he used in the at the Club World Cup, simply because I mean we know that Xabi Alonso is a very adaptable manager. He didn't begin playing with a three at the back at Bayer Leverkusen. It was only when he realized that was the best thing for his squad that it did. And at the Club World Cup with Real Madrid, he was mostly also adapting to what had been seen before with Ancelotti. He didn't want to make a lot of like massive changes just as soon as he arrived and only with a few games to play. So I feel like there's a lot of questions around that. What is Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid team going to look like? How is he going to play? Is he going to play with like two inside forwards or two traditional wingers? Um, but I would say that maybe he's gonna be there's gonna be a little less pressure on Mastantuono to do defensive work. But the thing is, when you have Vinicius and when you have Kylian Mbappe, players with a lot more pedigree and with a lot more, let's say, with a bigger trajectory than Mastantuono, who are two players who do not press and do not do defensive work simply because it's not in their game. If you're gonna add a third player who cannot do that, can Real Madrid work around that? Can they keep that structure? Can they keep that balance? That's why I'm speculating on the fact that he probably be asked to do a little bit more of that simply because he's the new guy, he's the young guy, and these other two players are probably gonna be higher, let's say, on the on the food chain, let's say, to be given those priorities, those privileges.
Yeah, I mean, I think not only would the system collapse if you had three attackers not doing defensive work, but it already collapses with two attackers not doing defensive work. So I think Alonso, in that sense, has a lot on his hands to figure out because I think he really needs to convince Vinicius and Mbappe to lead by example in that situation as well. But just to explore his best position a little bit further, I've seen him compared to several right wingers, including Lamine Yamal,
Mm.
which I think stylistically, I don't think it makes sense.
No.
I understand why they do it because it's a Barcelona versus Real Madrid youngster now, but
Yeah.
he is not a traditional right winger from what I've seen, and he seems to be. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but just based on what I've seen, he seems to fit more of the mold of like the pseudo right wing 10, like
Mm.
Ozil or Odegaard, maybe even Arda Güler, James Rodriguez. Is
Mm.
that accurate? David Silva, like a slower winger, but someone who can drift centrally, cut in. And that position at Real Madrid in particular actually has we've had relatively bad experiences with it because we've never
Mm.
been able to incorporate players like that. Odegaard left. Now, this is in part because Modric and Kroos played for us forever, and no one was
Mm.
ever going to displace them. So, like two spots in the lineup were always occupied by those two great players. But what's the best player come? What kind of player is he exactly?
I feel like you made a pretty accurate description of Matantono's player. I mean, he's not going to be a bag of tricks like we've seen with Lamine Yamal, like a guy who is always like trying to take on the player and throw some incredible skill at him and try to like absolutely I don't know, try a nutmeg, try a like a rainbow flick, something like that. He's not like an exactly flashy player, but he's the kind of player who like really likes to combine with attackers around him. He likes to shoot from range, something that he's becoming incredible at. You've seen, of course, you've probably seen his free kick against Boca, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. That
That's like
was yeah, that Boca game is the one that
mm,
I went and looked at because one of our writers actually went back and watched it and recommended other people to watch it, and then that's the one I went and referred to. That free kick was crazy.
yeah. Probably that's the first image that most Europeans or European-based fans got from Mastantuono, that free kick. I feel like that's been like a trademark, not the free kick, but maybe shooting from range. And yeah, and also he's like a smart, I would say he's not a flashy dribbler, but a smart dribbler. I feel like he's great at combining with other players. He's really, really technical when it comes to like his shooting or his passing as well. I feel like that's what you would describe in, the traditional Italian role of mezzala, perhaps a player who can play either on the wing or in the right midfield role. But I feel like he's more. I would say that he's more comfortable starting on the wing and then drifting inside, which maybe means that he's got a little bit more of a future in that role than perhaps the likes of Odegaard and James Rodriguez, who are more traditional number tens. At least when they were at Real Madrid, they were like more traditional number tens. You've seen that with James Rodriguez. Like he's not exactly a player who will make a lot of running, but he's extremely technical and he's like a, a ticking clock when it comes to play. I feel like Matantuono is a little bit more active than that. He's not exactly like he's not like really really pacey, but he's not slow either. He's not that kind of player. But I feel like he's someone who can like combine really well. He can find those sort of pockets of space in between the defenses. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of an accurate expression. Maybe he has more of a future because he can actually begin uh, his runs perhaps from the right wing instead of like from the right midfield role, which probably is going to overlap with someone like Federico Valverde or Arda Güler, as you said before. So maybe he has more of a future because of that.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what Xabi Alonso will do for all those reasons you mentioned. Like, Goulier has been playing a little bit deeper in the Club World Cup. Bellingham has been the guy who's been playing more advanced, and I wonder if Masantuono will take that kind of Bellingham role maybe if while Bellingham is out, we'll see. Is there anything we're gonna wrap it up here, but is there anything that we didn't discuss that you think is important to close with?
Hmm. I mean, we've touched upon, of course, well, who he's like as a player. Some I wouldn't say red flags, but maybe the reasons why River fans probably do not, yeah, have turned on him a little bit. So maybe you should be a little bit on the lookout if he becomes a little bit like yeah, impatient, or maybe the fact that since everything has been coming up so perfectly, I would say, for Mastantuono for now, maybe if he comes through a rough patch, it's going to be the first time that he something like that happens to him, because everything has been so on the rise, on the up and up for River. So maybe you should look into that. But also, if you want something a little bit more curious about him, is the fact that a few weeks ago, he's shown himself to be like a real sort of vinyl collector. He likes a lot of he likes listening to his songs on vinyl. He has a very sort of uh, rock oriented sort of ear for music, which is not a very common thing for 17-year-old footballers, I would say. He's shown a little bit of his record collection a few days ago. You can check that out. It's
So
pretty surprising, I
this
would
sounds
say.
like a green flag, not a red flag. This one.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
green flag, absolutely. Like, is you're gonna get the support of like most people if you show that kind of music taste, I would say, especially on vinyl. Apparently, he got that a lot from his parents as well. That kind of love for vinyl records. So I feel like, yeah, that's something interesting, for something that you probably didn't expect. Maybe if you look at him, you would probably believe that he's not 17-year-old or something. But like, for someone to have those kind of tastes in music and like music consumption, that's certainly funny, I would say, or uncommon. But yeah, I feel like it's a massive coup. It's become Argentina's biggest, most expensive sale of all time, overtaking a record that was almost withstood for 20 years in the case of Sergio Agüero to Atletico Madrid. So yeah, that comes with a lot of hype as well, which is something that Real Madrid fans are probably going to need to, as I said before, temper a little bit. Um, but yeah, maybe in the context of Argentina, it's like come with a lot of pressure and a lot of like, what is he going to do now that he's going to face these different players? He's going to share a dressing room with such massive personalities, but in the context of Real Madrid, maybe it's just some other player in the squad that's gonna. I mean, it's no different from the likes of Arda Güler, who also came with so much hype from Turkey, or even the likes of Hendrik, or the likes of even Vinicius and Rodrigo when they first arrived at Real Madrid. So maybe that's just one more player in this sort of transfer policy that Real Madrid have for now. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can adapt to that.
Santiago, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your time. You gave us over 30 minutes of great analysis. We're very excited for Franco Mastantuono, and I'm really happy that you joined us. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And can you please tell us where can people find your work, and also how can they listen to Hand Up Pod?
Yeah, absolutely. My Twitter handle is at Santi_Bauza, just like my surname there. I'm also on Instagram at sbauza99, where since I also work with the league, the Argentine league, I also get to go to a lot of Argentine games, so you can have a look at the experience of what it's like to be at an Argentine game almost every weekend, if you want. And you can also listen to Hand of Pod on most podcast streaming sites. I would say Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud as well. So you can also listen to us there, and enjoy it. Thank you very much once again for having me.
Thank you so much, Santiago.